Yeah, I actually think if that frame was cropped in now and black and white, I think that's a pretty good photograph. I think that's a
Mm.
pretty good photograph. I think so. I've seen this when I've been out on street walks with photographers. Yeah. What they'll do is they have to get the photograph as soon as possible. I want a suggestion of movement. We just want a little bit more animation, I think. Yeah, just hanging in there. Because the more time that you can spend with the person, then you're going to see more.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm here with Gary Lashmar, photographer
There you go.
and YouTuber. How are you doing, Gary? Thank you for coming to my show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So the idea behind this is that in our community, we submit every week pictures, and this week topic was portraits or street portraits, maybe environmental portraits. I'm gonna show you a lot of them, and I would love to hear what you think about those.
Great stuff. I can't wait. I'm looking forward.
Perfect. All right, so let's take a look at the first one.
Okay, the first portrait I absolutely love. That it's in black and white as well is, I think, a good choice. I think in this scene, perhaps this part of the world as well, it will be an easier choice to have put it in color. I don't know because I can't see it in color. But I think there's a confidence in the photographer for making that choice to put it in black and white. Possibly if I had something to say, I mean, these guys are characters, right? I love characters. For me, that's at the heart of street portraits. So these guys are almost like they have to be photographed. I would possibly have taken a step or two closer in. There's a bunch. The space above the guys at the top there that possibly, I wouldn't say taken from the image, but I would probably have cropped in a little tighter on this frame. And that's just nitpicking. I mean, it's a damn good portrait, isn't it?
All right. I also know you teach workshops. Is something that you teach during a workshop applicable in this sort of situation?
I think so, in all situations. I mean, my workshop, well, it's called DARE. So it's the DARE, D-A-R-E, DARE photography experience. And at the heart of the workshop is this idea that it's fear, yeah? That is like as a consequence of fear, a lot of our photographs are kind of perhaps not as intimate as we want them to be. So like
what do you
fear,
do to overcome that fear?
well, I mean, at the workshop, especially, there's challenges that will throw participants into the lion's den, for want of a better cliche. So it's the workshop is set up because the workshop's based on my experience of overcoming those fears. The kind of photographs that inspire me, street photography, portraits, fashion, everything. The photographer is pushing it. You know, they're taking walks, and this, our sort of, I don't know how to put it, our thought processes. It stops us. It stops us from, oh, you can't get in closer. You can't take 2 or 3 steps closer because this person will, they're going to get annoyed. I mean, that plays out across the board. It could be just like, it's not just about taking 2 or 3 steps closer. You understand that you're going to get better photographs. That's not always the case. But I think at the heart of my workshop, it's about supporting participants to take 2 or 3 steps closer, literally and metaphorically, in how they approach their photography, full stop, and business, etc., etc.
All right. So is that like one thing I should do if I decide to take someone's portrait, or is there another maybe advice you would give me, maybe to overcome my fear? Because sometimes, you are kind of maybe hesitant to get the eye contact, to kind of, to get the permission or not get the permission.
Do you know what? I mean, getting permission, listen, it's like, for me, you can't overcome that fear. You can't overcome that fear. That fear's always there. And the idea that I'm going to somehow overcome it is kind of, it's not, we're always looking for that. But for me, that's not part of the deal. If I want to take the kind of photographs that I aspire to take, sometimes occasionally get, but quite often it's like I'm moving in the direction of taking, I need to turn my attention when I'm out shooting to this, what's going on with me, right? So this fear, because if I'm not aware of it, then I'm reacting to it all the time. So for example, a street portrait, okay? I'm out on the streets, and what I've seen, I've seen this when I've been out on street walks with photographers. Yeah, what they'll do is it's like they have to get the photograph as soon as possible, because they don't want to take up too, even if they've asked the person if they can take the photograph, they don't want to feel that they're taking up too much of this person's time. Yeah, or they want to get the photograph quick. So, oh, I've got your photograph. Is that okay? Is that okay? And the person, yeah, and then they move on. Well, and I do that as well. I'm guilty of that all of the time. But what I'm always working on and moving in the direction of doing, just hanging in there. Yeah, just hanging in there. Because the more time that you can spend with the person, then you're going to see more. Yeah. I've taken photographs where, like, I've been hanging out with someone for like just 2 minutes, and then they've shown me a wallet, an old wallet with a photograph of their wife, like the wife. I did this was like last year. It was in Camden in London. They showed me a photograph of their wife, and the wife had passed away like a few months before. That was the photograph there. I would never, if I just quickly got the photo, I never would have got that photograph.
Okay.
And there's like I have like hundreds of examples of that, not just street portraits, just hanging out in a scene. Whereas there's a big part of me that's just like wants to run for cover, but hanging in there, that's where the juicy stuff is, in my experience. I could be wrong.
All right. So let's take a look at this one.
I love the vibrancy, the color. It almost has to be in color, this, right? It's kind of almost what I was suggesting in the last image that we was looking at. So that's fine. And the composition, I kind of like this. Maybe again, cropped in a little tighter. I love the free yellow, the free colored dots on the wall.
Yeah.
They're playing part, right? That's part of the composition. I just think here, this is almost like a post-production thing here. I would just bring the shadows up a little bit. That's it. So it's not necessarily anything to do with the composition itself, which I think is spot on. Composition spot on. Perhaps crop it in a little, just perhaps a little closer. Yeah, so there's less space at the top, less space at the right, less space on the left. Just bring the shadows up, just so that the literally the faces, yeah. So we can just see a little more detail. Simple as that. That's a great portrait, guys.
Moving on to the next picture.
I mean, these are great portraits, right? I really like this. This is for me, it's pure street portraiture. Yeah. So this is not necessarily asking for permission. This is capturing what's going on. The foreground. Do you know what I'm having a little bit of a conflict with here? I love the color. My first impression when I saw this was, it's got to go in black and white. But now I'm looking at, I will probably leave this in color, This splash of color, this pink, is part of the composition, right? It's like she's looking at that. What the hell is that? And that I don't know, that's fine in this instant. Sometimes I don't like that. If I like, oh, what is that person looking at? And that's all to do with the composition and the storytelling. But this works. I will say here, and this is being very, very, very fussy, I will probably warm this image slightly, the temperature, warm it slightly in post-production. I think the white balance is slightly off. It could be my screen though. Could be my screen, but I don't really have too much. My thing is here, I want to come in like because I used to do these critiques in like for workshops and stuff like that, or post workshop. Okay. And my thing is, I always want to find something that I can improve about the photograph. It's not necessarily being critical. I'm struggling with that one because this is just a great portrait. It's just maybe just warm the image slightly. Just warm the image slightly. That's it.
All right. Moving on to the next one.
Again, there's not much room to maneuver here, but I would crop this in slightly, a little. Again, this is a really nice portrait. Obviously, pretty much the photographer's asked permission. The thing is, if this is a good portrait. Like if I'm asking permission for somebody, if I can take their photograph, I've got a little bit of access. I really want to work that time, that extra little bit of time I've got with them, and it looks like the photographer's kind of done that here.
So if you do that, if you get the access, and then person answers, all right, so what should I do? How do you pose your subject? Because that's something that maybe the subject expects.
Okay, now I'm a portrait photographer as well. Okay, that's how I make my money. So for me, I do have that capacity to work with the subject in that way. But it's not always the same, right? If you're just stopping someone on the street, it's not like I'm shooting when I'm shooting a fashion model or something like that, or even just portraits. So let me turn that off. So in this instance, it's not about posing. You understand? It's about, for me, it's about having a dialogue. Really, that's all I can do. Really, it depends on the person. Sometimes you will stop a model in the street. that's a whole different ball game. It's almost you can suss it out. You can tell that they've almost had experience. Then you can kind of pull them about and they're fine with it. But with I'm just talking with somebody on the street, I'm not necessarily. I don't even know what that means in that context. Posing someone. For me, what I'm doing. See, what I'm doing when I'm shooting portraits or shooting, I've got access to them, but I've only got so much time, right? I've only got so much time. So I'm looking. What I see with a lot of photographers, especially I see this at my workshop a lot, is that they have an idea almost the kind of shot that they want to get in their head. Not always. Sometimes they don't even have that, but they have an idea. And then they get the shot and then they're so busy congratulating themselves on the back of the camera with the shot that they got. And then all of a sudden, the subject moves into this beautiful little symmetry with the background, and then they're missing it because with a photograph, the difference between that and that is a totally different shot. The difference between that and that is worlds apart in terms of so we just need to always be looking what's going on. I mean, we don't have to be trigger happy, right? But just looking for that click. And then I don't think we can come up with a shot as good as, like, in our minds, as good as the universe can conspire to put in front of us by accident. We just need to be vigilant to it. That's what I think.
All right. Moving on to the next one.
Okay, the next portrait, I love the tones. The black and white's great. And for me, I'm not really learning anything about the character here. I mean, it kind of feels a little bit almost like I wouldn't say a paparazzi type shot. The depth of field, like the fall off the subject in the background. I have to be careful here because this is not necessarily my kind of favored shot. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not a good shot, but there's very little to connect with here. At the very least, I don't necessarily say I'm always having to be connecting with the subject looking in my direction, but I just want a little bit more. The technique here is, there's nothing wrong with the technique, right? Everything's sharp, everything's in focus. The photographer kind of knows what they're doing. I just want a little bit more to connect with, I think. But yeah, it's fine. The shot's fine.
So what would you do differently if you were about to photograph a subject like this?
It's not complex for me. I just want to see. I don't like. So, for example, I'm guessing here that the photographer is not connecting with this subject. They're not chatting here, right? They're not. This is, and I'm assuming this is quite. Maybe this is taken with what, I don't know. Maybe even 100mm or an 85. I could be wrong. I don't know. It's not a 50, is it? But I just want to get. Listen, portraits full stop with me, and I suppose you are asking me. So for me, I'm not shooting any. I'm not shooting any portraits at all unless I'm pretty much this close to them. Like 35mm or 24, occasionally, very rarely a 50mm. I just need to connect with them, which for me quite often is having a dialogue. That's it. That is street portraits for me. I don't really take street portraits. You know those portraits where you just walk up to somebody and you quickly click them? I don't.
All right. So basically almost everything with permission.
Yeah, with permission, because I want to get that access. Occasionally, it's too good to be true. And you sense that I'm not going to get time with this person. And then occasionally it's then just getting the shot. There's a few images like that you'll see perhaps on my Instagram, but mostly a lot of the people that I photograph as well tend to be, they're quite sensitive. It's quite sensitive.
Okay.
I don't like, so for example, quite often I shoot like homeless people. Not because they're homeless, you understand, but quite often, unfortunately, homeless people just tend to have a whole bunch of character. They just have this character. And for me, I don't take pictures of homeless people without their permission. I don't care if people do that. I'm not religious about it. But for me, it's a selfish thing. I want to get time and I want to get the photograph that I want, and I can't just snatch at that. And again, and also, yes, it is kind of sensitive. I just don't really want to be getting into that.
Okay. Maybe tell me this. This is going to be interesting for many people. So you walk on a street and then suddenly you just see an interesting character, interesting subject. So what do? You see, I don't know, a man or a woman or someone just walking in front of you. So how is the interaction looks like?
Okay. I know I'm waffling a bit, so I want to kind of keep it a little bit shorter for you. I have two ways of shooting. If I stop someone on the street, if someone's just walking towards me on the street and I want to get their photograph, I want to get that. Then what I kind of do, I will click it. And that might be the best shot. That's just a safety shot, really. Then I literally will. You can see this quite often on my YouTube videos, I will say, "Wow, you look awesome. Guys, please let me take your photograph," or words to that effect. So I'll kind of be a little extra about it. And I would say probably 7 times out of 10, 6, 7 times out of 10, they'll be fine with it. And it also quite often, that little bit of extra time depends on how long I've been out that day. So if I've already been out an hour, then I'm more confident. So I'm then, yeah. But if I've only been out 5, 10 minutes, I'm that fear, that hesitancy is more prominent. So yeah, but quite often a lot of the photographs and the portraits, Martin, that you see on my portfolio, I've been there chatting with those guys for a long period of time before I even take the photograph. Sometimes not even that day. Sometimes I will come back because there's 3 or 4 streets in London that I work over and over, so they're used to me being there. So it's easier. So you're almost like you're shooting anonymously, but in plain sight, because they know they're used to me, they forgot about me, sort of thing.
So let's take a look at the next one.
I love this. Everything's technically wrong. Like, what should be in focus is not in focus, and like this, this is what you'd perhaps textbook. And the guys at the back that are in focus kind of shouldn't be in focus. They should be perhaps out of focus. But I love that. That textbook part of me, that brainwashed part of me is kind of it's inverted, but I love the way that it is. I don't really know how I would improve this frame. I would maybe, you focus at the guys at the front, I think it's almost as good. It'd probably be almost as good. I don't know. I'd have to see that. This is great portraits. There's like 10 portraits.
Moving on to the next one.
Yeah, this is great because I was going to say she. I don't know if the photographer's a she or he has got them posing a little, right? I love this. I mean, I don't think perhaps the photographer's got a whole bunch of clicks from this. Yeah, for me, this is like a sweet, nice portrait. There's nothing wrong with this portrait at all. It's a nice family portrait. I've got 3 children. If I had this photograph of my kids, I'd be happy with it. For me, though, I want something a little bit different. So perhaps like if I had a wide lens and I'm closer in on these guys, because kids are great, right? Kids would be jumping up at the camera and pointing and all of this kind of thing. And look at that girl on the left there, the girl on the left, like her eyes. Imagine like her like really like up close to the camera. Those kind of photographs I love. But these are great. This is great. I mean, perhaps if like this is a full length composition, in effect, I can see their feet, I can see the top of their heads. Perhaps a little bit tighter in if I was going to keep this frame.
All right, moving on to the next one.
These are great portraits, right? I wanted some bad portraits. These portraits are great. I don't really know look at the finger. The finger is the portrait. I mean, I love that. And the guy's face, and he's a character. The light here is I don't know if this is I think this is just available light, right? I don't think there's anything.
Probably.
Yeah, no, I don't really, I could look at this photo for ages, but obviously that's great portrait. Next one.
Next one.
Okay. I think this is beautiful. The color, everything. The smile, it is kind of a textbook portrait. I don't know really. I mean, I'm definitely getting in closer here, right, for a few clicks. I think the difference here is the backdrop is part of the composition, and it all works. The lines, the reflection, the color, the blue on the left, and obviously the coat is to die for. They've probably saturated a little, I would have thought, but it works. Again,
yeah, especially the red and green.
Sorry. The red and the green, it's all. So for me, like portraits and street photography and portraits, I think the color has to be playing a part for me a little. Almost has to be part of the story, And here it definitely. No, I'm not talking about telling a story. It has to enhance the composition, and that it's definitely doing that here. But Martin, can you imagine flipping this in black and white? It's still going to be a beautiful photograph.
Oh yeah,
but. In black and white, maybe it would be cropped in a little, perhaps, because you'd lose some of the blue on the left. It would no longer be blue, so you'd have a whole bunch of. I don't know. It still probably work because you've got the lines. But yeah. Okay, simple portrait. I think for me here, I'm not really. This is difficult. This is almost like kind of. It feels like almost like a bit of a headshot, but wider. I don't know if I'm really. This is not the best light. The light's fine, but it's not. I think perhaps maybe directing the subject. First of all, this frame, I'm cropping this in slightly, even in post production. I'll be cropping this in. Maybe even make this square. Yeah, but a square crop. I think if this was cropped square and it was put in black and white, I think for me it's a better image. The whites in this, I think it's almost like maybe even half a stop overexposed. But the light here is very flat, and I think even the post production it could do. I mean, I'm not big into like post production. I wouldn't want to be people be thinking that that's a way out of trouble. But I think digital, and this is I think a digital frame. Digital's either very flat or it's very contrasty, so it needs a little bit of work. And I think this probably will benefit from that. It's a simple frame. I can't be overly critical, but I just want a little bit more of the person's personality revealed in somehow. That comes about from me hanging in there having a dialogue. You know, it could be as simple as asking her, like, what would it look like if you was playing with your hair now? If she was doing that, that's a different photograph. I mean, you can get yourself out of trouble with anybody by just asking that. God, what would it be like if you was playing with your hair now? God, if you was putting headphones in, what would it look like? With one hand. So what would it look like if you was fixing a tire with one hand? You know what I mean? Anything. Not her, because she's not a guy. But you know what I'm saying? Just asking questions.
Yeah.
Some people, they'll get you out of trouble because they're more animated than other people, so you don't have to go looking for it. But sometimes you just need to have a few questions, and then just a little bit, like, everyone's a statue in a photograph. And we want to kind of, I want a suggestion of movement. Unless the character is so striking, it could be what they're wearing. It could be the light. Because it's not about necessarily getting people doing cartwheels here. We just want a little bit more animation, I think. You can't. A suggestion of movement. That's my feeling.
Do you sometimes get like negative responses, either from, after you ask permission, but also before when you take the shot?
Yeah, and
How
I
do you
think,
deal with that?
I deal with it because it's fine with me. So I think one of the things I know one of the things from dialogues I've had with hundreds of people at my workshops is that one of the things that stops people from keep moving and keep progressing and growing as photographers is the fear of rejection. Yeah, the fear of rejection. And you know what? It's impossible to be rejected. What we do, we just give our power away, and then that all accumulates inside us. Like the way that I look at it is like, the more no's we get, statistically, you're closer to a yes. That's the way of looking at it. I'm not saying, listen, we can't be rejected, you understand, but it's just a way of looking at it. Like, there's a process I do at my workshop. I purposely, around about 45 minutes to an hour, so that the participant has an experience fast-tracked of feeling rejected. It's horrible. And then, you know what? Well, it's not that bad. There's nothing going on. It's all up here. So I understand the feeling, and you never get used to feeling, like, even after what I've just said, it's not like I don't feel rejected. I do feel rejected. It's fine. It's just part of life. I think what it is, we feel like we shouldn't feel like that. So then it's not the feeling, it's the what we tag on the end of it. I feel, but life is about that. Life's full of that feeling. We're meant to feel like that. If we weren't meant to be feeling like that, we wouldn't feel like it. So it's fine, guys. Go out. And I'll tell you what to do. There was another street photographer. I saw he had an awesome little, similar to the thing I did at my workshop, where he had a practice where you practice getting, I think it was Eric Kim, where you have to get, like, I think it's 20 no's before you can come back to me, or something like that. So you, even if everyone says yes for 2 hours, you still have to get the no's. I think that's a great process. It's a great process. You can see how excited I am about that.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, I think here the color is a distraction, because the story is the hand here, yeah? And the color is a distraction. And if you put that in black and white, it's a totally different photograph for me. Do you know what it is?
How do you decide when the color is distraction and when to use black and white instead?
Well, there's no thought process here. And in actual fact, you know straight away, like, as soon as... Now, I understand it's more difficult sometimes with our own photographs. That's why it's important to get a distance from them, because we took the damn thing. And quite often when we're taking the photograph, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, like the subjective stuff. So we're not necessarily seeing, I'm not like for me, that photograph might mean something totally different because of my day and everything I'm bringing into that. So that's why it's important sometimes at least get a couple of days distance from it before I edit. I mean, I'm the worst for that. I mean, I usually I don't want stuff stacking up, so I tend to edit pretty much straight away. But I've been doing it quite a long time, so maybe I have a little tiny bit more experience than some people, but having a distance I would think is benefit. But for me, it's to answer the question, it's an instinct, especially looking at that photograph. I see that was an easy one for me because straight away, black and white straight away. The color's a distraction. I don't have to think about it or analyze it. It's a distraction for me. So I would put that in black and white. And also the space, all of the negative space is not really, the photograph's not benefiting from that, I don't think. In black and white, it would be less of a consideration, because it will create, because there's a lot going on at the bottom, so maybe the space at the top, it gives it room to breathe a little. But in color, I don't necessarily think it's helping. Yeah, I actually think if that frame was cropped in now and black and white, I think that's a pretty good photograph. I think that's a pretty good photograph. I think so. Maybe the thumb, now I'm getting really picky now. So the eye, as we're looking at it, the right eye, as we're looking at it, if that was covered by the thumb, I think it's even more powerful. But I'm just being nitpicking. I think that's quite a striking photograph in black and white, closer in. I really do. As for this photograph, oh yeah, I think I love. I mean, listen, that sometimes the simplicity, I really think, and what I talked about earlier about the character. I mean, you can see this guy in what he's wearing. Yeah, like the color here is part of the story. The yellow on the yellow is a great spot. It's almost like they've moved this person into that background, and if they haven't, well, it feels like that. And the reflections of are they like telephones are they like smartphones in the background in a reflection? I think so.
Or maybe it seems like a kiosk, like from a restaurant where you like McDonald's when you make an order, I guess.
Yeah, this photographer, I just know that that's part of the story, and or at least part of the composition, and that if those kiosk phones were not in the frame, then it would be cropped in a lot tighter, definitely. And I think that is definitely that's why. I mean, you look at the phone on the right, the composition, everything is falling into the grid, right? Into the thirds, and it works. I mean, I would say that yeah. I mean, it's just like great portrait.
All right, moving on to the next one.
The next frame, again, for me, instinct, black and white. For me, instinct. That's what I'm feeling here. I think with a little more contrast added to the picture as well. The shadow on the left, I think the image is a better image. It will be a better image. In black and white, all of these lines and all of these, the windows and everything, they're going to become almost like part of the story, and then it works. It's a better frame. For me, I don't know. I mean, profile. For me, for the image to be in profile, there has to be something quite special. There has to be something else for me to connect with in the photograph for the image to be in profile. And I'm not sure there's anything really here that I'm connecting with. Yeah, I don't. Obviously, he's looking at something, but. But I think, like I said, black and white, you can, for me, I would improve. I don't know if it can be improved. The image is fine. It's fine. For me, if I had taken the photograph, I would add a little bit of contrast to this, and it would be in black and white. And it would, the highlights would be, the highlights and the shadow, that contrast would just be a little bit more striking, I think. And I would straighten the image slightly.
Let's take a look at the last one.
So that was Chris, and I took that last week. Well, I don't know when you're posting this video, but the time of now, us talking, I took that, I think, last week or the week before, and that was in Leicester Square. Oh, no, I met him in Leicester Square. And he was a bit cheeky, Chris. I wanted to get his portrait, and basically there was a two-way thing going on, so I had to buy him breakfast for that.
Okay.
Now, I'm quite often hesitant. Like I said, I was talking about quite often a lot of the subjects, the people that I shoot, subjects are quite sensitive. You got to be careful about handing out money here. So we have no idea do you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get too pie in the sky about stuff. I wouldn't be necessarily paying for photographs. Contradicting myself totally. I kind of did with that. I kind of did. So I brought in breakfast, but we did have a chat, and you'll see in the video I posted, there's a video I posted on YouTube. It might even be the last video. It's
okay,
one of the
I will link
food.
it.
Yeah. And you'll see me taking those photographs of him. It's with I have a GoPro, so it's a bit kind of, you got to take it or leave it. But you'll see when I met him, the initial shot I got of him was just the second I saw him. So I would have had that shot. I would have had that shot anyway, and he was fine with that. But then I thought, no, this guy's face is too. It's like, it's, you know, you can see the last 20 years of his life on his forehead. Like it's just, and he was a wonderful guy. He was really sweet. So. And again, but it didn't work for me in color.
I like it. Maybe you mentioned shooting with 35 or even 28. There is this maybe an idea that, you know, portraits are supposed to be shot with, let's say, 50 or maybe even like 75 because of the distortion of the face. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, that's why it is a learning curve. Now, I'm a portrait photographer as well. I shoot fashion, I shoot editorial, so I shoot all that stuff. But I shoot those with 24mm and a 35mm. Quite often what you'll see with my photographs, my portraits especially, in actual fact, with all of them, the subject is in the center. Yeah, they're in the center of the frame. And is like with the photograph of Chris, the last image that you showed, this image of mine, it kind of doesn't matter too much because he's filling the frame. But even when they're further back, partly because I'm a huge fan of that kind of single point. Even a lot of my work, there's always something in the center. I love that Wes Anderson kind of a consistency.
Yeah.
It's not consistent in that way because it's street photography, but there's a slight symmetry through. If you put one of my blogs up, you'll see everything's kind of center. But there's that going on. But also as a byproduct of me shooting really wide. And so because of especially with the Fuji lens, there's lenses that I'm using now. When I was shooting Canon, it wasn't so much because the lenses, they took care of the distortion. They were a lot, but with the Fuji, I'm on a 16mm. I'm shooting most of my portraits. So I think the equivalent of 24, because the Fuji, obviously it has that crop sensor, but there's a bit more distortion. It's not as, and you got to be careful. I mean, I don't want to be getting into that, especially with like people on the street. You don't want to get into like grotesque, making it, because that's kind of, I think that's taking. I don't want to do that. But even with Chris there, you can see it's a little bit borderline. The nose is coming out. But I think with Chris, that photograph, I don't think it does get into that grotesque. I think it's kind of, his eyes are everything in that photograph for me. So the nose is almost, although it's coming out, it's almost like you know, it's the eyes for me that take that photograph away. But
it's a very nice photo. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I know, sorry, I do tend to waffle on a little bit. I take after my mum, especially when I'm on the phone. I say, you have to shut me up. So, but thanks, guys. Yeah. So, but the photographs, they were easy, man. I wanted there wasn't one bad photograph, was there? So I wanted, maybe next time if you have me back.
All right. I will make sure to bring some bad ones.
No, I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding. But yeah.
All right. So thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.